days. In the head-to-head, Clinton's 7-point lead has been trimmed to 5 at 49-44. In the latest Monmouth survey here in New Hampshire, Clinton has a 46-42 edge on Trump, the 4-point cushion less than half the 9-point lead late last month in this state in that poll. The new Monmouth poll has the U.S. Senate race here deadlocked at 46 apiece. Senator Aide was up 2 in this poll last month but has trailed in others. Senator Aide will join us here in a moment. And just a few minutes ago, a new NBC poll here in New Hampshire has Clinton with a 9-point advantage over Trump in that poll. That's up 2 from just 2 last month. In the Senate race, NBC has Senator Aide with a 1-point lead over Governor Hassan. It was 8 points last month. With the major party nominees, Donald Trump began the day not on the campaign trail, but with another business trip, this time to Washington. He was in D.C. to formally open his new hotel just down the street from the White House. Trump says criticism over the timing of that event is unfair, since Hillary Clinton missed several days of campaigning to study for the debates and took in an Adele concert. In about an hour, Trump will hold a rally in Kinston, North Carolina, and we'll have a live report from there shortly. Hillary Clinton, who's celebrating her 69th birthday today, held a couple of events in Florida, a state Trump must get in order to have a chance of getting to 270 electoral votes. She told a syndicated radio show today she is sick of all the meanness and wants to increase fun and bring people together. Her idea? A big national dance party. In other news, Defense Secretary Ash Carter is ordering the Pentagon to stop seeking repayments of enlistment bonuses given to members of the California National Guard who served overseas. Carter has instructed officials to set up a streamlined process by the first of the year to help troops get relief from the overpayment obligation. First up tonight, something a little different. We begin our election countdown series, Issues That Matter. Here's the full list based on a recent Fox News poll. The number 1 issue is, of course, the economy. Number 2, terrorism. Then it's education, race relations, federal deficit, health care is 6th. Then climate change, foreign policy, immigration, and at number 10, drug addiction. That is where we begin tonight. This evening, senior correspondent Rick Leventhal here in New Hampshire with concerns about the growing drug epidemic affecting the country, but specifically this region.
Authorities call this Operation Granite Hammer. Agents with the Drug Enforcement Administration join local police busting suspected drug buyers in Manchester, New Hampshire, home to more heroin and opioid addicts per capita than almost anywhere in America.
New Hampshire has suffered so greatly from the heroin crisis and the drugs pouring across the border. The rate of heroin overdose has nearly quadrupled in the state. Once again, our politicians have tragically failed this country.
Both presidential candidates have addressed the issue during this campaign.
When you're ready to get help, there's not enough places to go to get help. And we are losing thousands and thousands of Americans of all age, but particularly young Americans under 40. And we have got to address this.
Hillary Clinton has pledged $10 billion to fight the opioid epidemic, $7.5 billion to support a new federal-state partnership that aims to prevent and treat drug addiction, the rest for existing substance abuse programs, and wants to expand treatment instead of jail for nonviolent offenders. Donald Trump, short on specifics, says he will, quote, stop the flow of illegal drugs into the country, in part by building a wall, and will help all of those people so seriously addicted get the assistance they need. The number of addicts has skyrocketed in the past decade, fueled by the use and abuse of prescription drugs and the rise of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 40 to 50 times stronger than street-level heroin. Dealers often mix the two to lure users, and the results can be deadly. With tens of thousands of overdose deaths every year nationwide, at least 80 of them here in Manchester since January.
We're up well over 600 calls for the year so far, just on overdose calls alone.
Firefighters now spend much of their day responding to OD calls, trying to resuscitate addicts 3 to 5 times every shift.
You've been with the Manchester Fire Department 32 years.
32 years, yes.
Ever seen anything like this?
Never seen anything like this. Never.
Chris Blevins lost her stepdaughter Amber to a heroin overdose and says she's not sure either candidate understands the scope of the problem.
They're not talking about a plan. What are you going to do that's going to save a life tonight?
Dennis Nugent is a recovering addict whose wife died of a suspected OD.
If I mourned every single person that we've lost, either directly or indirectly, I would be in mourning 24 hours a day.
Now he's counseling others on the challenge of overcoming opioids.
You can provide an example for somebody, but nobody's going to change unless they do it themselves.
The Manchester Fire Department created a program to try to help called Safe Station. It encourages anyone with addiction issues to walk into any firehouse and get fast-tracked into a treatment facility.
When we go to them, it's usually because they've hit rock bottom or they've overdosed. When they come to us, it's a choice.
This was Erin's second visit in a week.
I'm not a bad person. I just made bad choices. But I'm not going to give up on myself.
We look at it as if you show up once and you come back twice, that's 100% success rate because you found us the first time and you had an issue and came back again.
Stephanie Bergeron handles many of the cases referred by the fire department, but she and her staff couldn't save them all.
I can think of 4 of them off the top of my head that really rattled us.
Communities are being ruined. If anything could be likened to a weapon of mass destruction, it's heroin and fentanyl.
DEA Deputy Administrator Jack Riley admits interdiction efforts can't fix this plague that will be waiting for the next president to address.
And who's ever in charge in the White House, this is something they need to pay attention to.
The aggressive street-level bust will continue. The feds and local police trying to follow the supply chain from the buyers to the sellers to the distributors. And the treatment facility staying very busy here in Manchester with addicts walking into this firehouse and others across the city every single day looking for help. But people are dying too. And this is a crisis that stretches from coast to coast with nearly 50,000 overdose deaths every single year. That's far more people than are killed in car crashes. Brett?
It's such a huge story, Rick. I did a great job talking to all sides. This didn't, though, start with heroin and fentanyl. This epidemic was fueled by prescription drugs, right?
Right. America has just under 5% of the world's population. We consume roughly 80% of the world's pain medication, literally billions of pills annually, including the highly addictive oxycodone. People get hooked on it, and when they can't get the oxy, they often switch to heroin, which has a similar effect, but is far cheaper. Now, the DEA has received criticism for not doing more to target the drug companies and their suppliers, all of this creating a huge challenge for whoever moves into the White House next January.
Rick, thank you. That's why immigration and border security is such a huge issue here in New Hampshire. The Senate race here has huge ramifications nationally. With Democrats trying to retake the Senate, they see a vulnerability here. We will talk with incumbent Republican Kelly Aide in just a moment. First, correspondent Brian Yennis sets the table for us.
Good to see you.
It's a Senate race that mirrors the battle for the control of the Senate. It's a virtual tie. New Hampshire's Democratic Governor Maggie Hassan is battling it out heading into the final days of the election against the Republican incumbent Senator Kelly Aide. Issues like the heroin epidemic and the economy are taking a backseat to Donald Trump.
The top of the ticket that's really impacting things. They're the tail on the dog. And right now it's Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton that are wagging that tail.
For months, Aide walked the political tightrope of supporting Trump while stopping short of endorsing him. But then, in a debate on October 3rd, she was asked if Trump is a role model for children.
I think that certainly there are many role models that we have, and I believe can serve as president, and so absolutely.
Aide says she misspoke. 5 days later, she officially withdrew her support for Trump.
For me, the information that came out in those tapes really came over to the issue of assault, and so I want my daughter to know where I stood on this issue. So I won't be voting for our nominee. I also won't be voting for Hillary Clinton.
So at the end of the day, she can try to distance herself all she wants, but she was choosing him to be our representative, and that was a political calculation, and then when the political wind shifted, she shifted too.
On Monday, Hillary Clinton stood with Hassan in New Hampshire. According to the Real Clear Politics poll averages, Clinton is outperforming outperforming Hassan, giving Republicans hope they can keep the seat. But in a state with a famous independent streak, it may come down to who voters believe can keep the president in check.
They want someone like Governor Hassan who will be a rubber stamp for Hillary Clinton.
I will always stand up to my party.
The candidates will debate for the last time on November 2nd, giving them one final big opportunity to swing voters their way in a state that allows for same-day voter registration. Brett?
Thanks, Brian. Republican Senator Kelly Aide is trying to hang on to her job here against fierce competition from Democrat Governor Maggie Hassan. We invited the governor to speak with us tonight in a separate interview. She declined, but Senator Aide has joined us. How are you?
Great, Brett. Good to be with you.
This race is tight.
It is.
This new Monmouth poll is out. It's directly tied. Inside that poll, Senator, there are favorable, unfavorable, and your favorable has dropped 8 points since September, and your unfavorable has gone up 3. Obviously, there was a debate in there where you had this nuanced position of supporting but not endorsing Donald Trump. Is that hurting you here?
I actually think we always know this is going to be a close race, and right now the people of New Hampshire are focused on who's going to be their voice in the Senate, who's going to be that strong voice to stand up for their rights, to fight for them no matter what, and to get things done on the fiscal state of the country, keeping the country safe in a dangerous world. And now with rising costs under Obamacare, this is such a big issue in this race.
You know, you've said that it's important for Republicans to hold on to the Senate. You talk to people around there and they say, why? Why is it so important? Why does it matter? Even if it's a President Clinton, what happens? Why is it important?
Well, it matters so much in terms of the Supreme Court, in terms of the fiscal state of the country. You know, I'm running against Governor Hassan, who's never seen a tax increase she doesn't like. So in terms of, you know, people keeping more money in their pockets, our small businesses continuing to thrive and grow instead of being burdened by regulations and increased taxes in Washington. And it matters so much if we're going to do anything about the health care law, because can you imagine Hillary Clinton with a rubber stamp like my opponent in terms of what she would do on all those issues?
You've used that line, the rubber stamp, that Governor Hassan is a rubber stamp for Hillary Clinton. We asked her about that the other day, and here's what she said.
I will always stand up to my party. I disagree with Hillary Clinton and the president on closing Guantanamo. I reject the president's proposal. I don't think it addresses national security interests or our vital interests abroad. I oppose and differ with Secretary Clinton on the fact that I think we should take a temporary pause and truly audit our refugee vetting system, because the FBI and CIA have said they have concerns about it. I differ with the president on the TPP. I differ with both of them on an internet sales tax.
So she says she stands up to her party.
She has her talking points there, but on fundamental issues for New Hampshire, first of all, the security of the country. One of the first things she did in this race was endorse the Iran agreement, which is dangerous for the country, for the world. We've seen Iran's bad behavior. I have been one of the biggest critics of it. Obamacare, thinking about the higher costs, higher deductibles, higher premiums, higher copays. She's with Secretary Clinton on this. She's going to follow her lead, and, you know, Secretary Clinton actually wants to expand Obamacare, not fix it with more competition, more choice, less one-size-fits-all from Washington. And again, she has a long history of tax increases. Secretary Clinton wants $1 trillion tax increase. And, you know, Governor Hassan has increased taxes on small businesses, campers, smokers, you name it in New Hampshire, and she's wanted to tax it. So these are big issues for my constituents where she is not going to differ from Hillary Clinton.
You mentioned health care and the premiums that we're hearing about across the country going up, and the administration's confirming. Here in New Hampshire, the Granite State actually has the second lowest increases in the country for the benchmark increases for the silver plan compared to other states, in between 2% and 14%. How do you convince somebody here?
Tell that to my constituents, because they're telling me the stories. You know, I was at the Olive Garden. I had the young man who was the cook who had a plan he liked before. He can't keep it. I'm meeting families that have higher deductibles, higher copays, and they had plans they liked, they couldn't keep. They're seeing rising health care costs. You know, even if you have a 10% increase, that's a big deal for a family. And also deductibles going higher. So this is what I'm hearing from my constituents. And Governor Hassan is not going to do anything to change that cost trajectory or to make sure that New Hampshire has more choice.
It's a similar story in the New Hampshire economy. The unemployment here is 2.9%, well below the national average. The median income is higher than the national average by far. how do you make the case that the Obama administration handling of the economy here in New Hampshire is having a negative effect and should therefore lead to a Republican
Senate? I can make that case quite easily, because there's not a small business I visit that doesn't have a story from an alphabet soup agency in Washington of more paperwork, more burdens, more regulations. And again, when we think about some of the proposals that are out there, Governor Hassan, she vetoed a budget because it decreased business taxes. She was the architect of a small business income tax in this state that thankfully others later overturned. So there's some big differences for businesses in this state when it comes to this Senate race. I happen to be the wife of a small business owner too, landscaping and snow plowing business. So I live it. I know what we need to do, and we can't have Washington, continuing to burden our small businesses on taxes, regulations, higher health care costs, and these are all issues where there's big differences in this race.
Your husband's also a former A-10 pilot.
He is.
And you obviously have a lot of experience on national security issues. Are you satisfied with the state of the U.S. military now? And what will the next president, whoever he or she is, have to deal with on that front?
Brett, I'm not satisfied. I believe that these automatic cuts to our military, which I opposed, are taking us in a direction where we're shrinking the size of the military. It's very dangerous in light of the threats we're facing from ISIS, Iran, aggression from China in the South China Sea, many of the terrorist groups around the world, Al-Qaeda is still continuing to threaten us. So we need to do a lot more to make sure that we have the equipment and training for our men and women in uniform, and we continue to support our veterans. That has been a priority of mine, because so many veterans still, unfortunately, are dealing with the VA and struggling to get the care that they deserve for having defended this nation.
So which presidential candidate is best positioned to advance U.S. interests around the globe?
Well, I know my role in the Armed Services Committee is I'm going to make sure. Yeah, I think the people of this country are going to decide that, because from my perspective, my role is going to stand up for the military no matter who's in that Oval Office. That's what I've done, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
In the primary, Donald Trump won here by 19.5 points. Aren't you risking kind of alienating some of those voters by the position you've taken?
Well, my position is based on what is in my heart on this issue. I'm a former prosecutor, and when those tapes came out, that crossed a line into criminality for me. I'm the mother of a daughter, an American first, so I'm going to be writing in Mike Pence.
All right, I want to ask you finally, we just did this big piece about the drug epidemic. Here in New Hampshire, opioid, it's at the center of the nation's opioid epidemic, one of the highest per capita addiction rates in the U.S. Total deaths from opiates or opioids, 245, projected to be 488 total drug deaths here in New Hampshire by the end of the year. It's a huge problem.
Devastating. I've met so many mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers who's lost someone that they love, and this is an issue I've worked on in the Senate with Rob Portman. The two of us were the lead Republicans with two Democrats. We passed a bill this summer, the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. Can't do it all from Washington, but it's really focusing on the help for the state and local efforts on prevention, treatment, recovery. And I've also been focusing on our southern border. That's where the heroin and this deadly drug called fentanyl are coming from, to places like New Hampshire, and more interdiction there and border security will help as well.
Senator, we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brett. Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we did invite Governor Hassan here as well. Up next, some more interesting details inside those new Fox polls on the presidential race, and we'll see what the candidates are doing as we are now inside 2 weeks to Election Day. Hard to believe we are live from New Hampshire tonight at the historic Roby's Country Store, a New Hampshire tradition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hooksett, New Hampshire. While this state has only 4 electoral votes, it is still very important to the electoral equations for both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. The two nominees are concentrating right now on a handful of other states where huge numbers of electoral votes are at stake. Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is in Kinston, North Carolina, where Donald Trump will be speaking in the next hour. Good evening, Carl.
Hi, Brett. Well, as we head into the final stretch here, the campaign is accelerating. More events, more polls, more insults. Donald Trump says he wants to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C., where he opened his new hotel today and lashed Hillary Clinton to Obamacare and its big premium hikes next year.
Remember, Hillary said herself, it was called Hillary Care before it was called Obamacare. She made that statement not too long ago. Now she's trying to withdraw that statement.
Clinton and Trump are in a dead heat within the margin of error in the brand new Fox News poll nationwide. When it comes to who voters trust more to handle foreign policy, Clinton is at 55% with a 15-point lead. On immigration and terrorism, Clinton has a 3-point lead. On the economy, Trump has a 4-point advantage over Clinton. The Democrat, for the second day in a row, barnstormed Florida, where Trump leads by 2 within the margin of error in the latest Bloomberg poll. In Lake Worth, at an event to help organize her ground game, Clinton mocked Trump for taking care of his business, but not the nation's voters.
While the hotel may be new, it's the same old story. If you have friends who are thinking of voting for Trump, I want you to tell them that he relied on undocumented workers to make his project cheaper.
Trump's gotten some traction pounding Clinton for defending Obamacare, but changed the subject back to urban renewal and the inner city today in Charlotte, North Carolina.
One of the greatest betrayals has been the issue of immigration. Illegal immigration violates the civil rights of African Americans. No group has been more economically harmed by decades of illegal immigration than low-income African American workers.
Tomorrow, Trump has 3 big rallies planned in battleground Ohio, while Hillary Clinton will be here in North Carolina and for the first time have a joint campaign appearance with the First Lady Michelle Obama. Brett?
Carl Cameron in North Carolina. Carl, thank you. The defense has rested in the Bridgegate trial. A former aide to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is charged with causing massive gridlock on the George Washington Bridge to retaliate against the Democratic mayor who refused to endorse the Republican Christie. The governor has not been charged and maintains he had no advance knowledge of the plan, although trial testimony has suggested that is not the case numerous times. We are learning more tonight about the confusion and disarray in the Clinton campaign during the early stages of her email scandal. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry tells us Team Hillary knew immediately the problems were bigger than they were letting on.
As soon as Hillary Clinton's email scandal broke, she downplayed its significance.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account.
Yet in private, a top advisor, Philippe Reines, bluntly admitted in a March 7, 2015 email, there is just no good answer. We need to gut through the process phase, get them all out there, and let the content do the talking. 3 days later, the aides who were not confident they had good answers let Clinton go out and vow,
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
But another new email shows on March 8, 2015, even Clinton advisor Mandy Grunwald wondered about a report that there were gaps in her official email, including no email turned over to the State Department from the trip where this now iconic photo of Clinton on her BlackBerry was snapped. Grunwald asked, do we have an answer for why there are no emails from the trip to Libya? Reines responded Clinton needed email the least when she traveled. Quote, she had both her deputy chiefs of staff with her, me, always a high-ranking state person most relevant to the issue. That still does not explain why there are no emails from a trip where Clinton was clearly on her BlackBerry, especially since the FBI has reported at the end of March 2015, the IT company overseeing Clinton's server used BleachBit to delete thousands of emails. That month is critical. On March 2nd, the New York Times revealed she used a private account. On March 4th, the Associated Press revealed the server. Republican Trey Gowdy immediately issued a subpoena for Clinton to preserve all records that day, and John Podesta emailed Cheryl Mills, think we should hold emails to and from the president? March 7th, Mills wrote they needed to clean up the president's answer about when he learned about the server, while Reines noted there was no good answer. And today we learned on March 5th, Reines noted he urged Clinton to hold a transparency day to release emails and transcripts of Wall Street speeches, claiming of Clinton, emailer-in-chief is in a very good place about all of this. Clinton also promised there was no classified information on her server. That turned out to be false. And newly obtained FBI records show the State Department withheld from public release 18 confidential messages between the president and Clinton. Brett?
Ed, thank you. Yesterday, the head of the progressive advocacy group Americans United for Change told Fox and Friends that his organization does coordinate with the Clinton campaign, insisting that it is 100% legal. The Obama administration is trying to shift the blame for rising health care insurance costs. Those are the first comments since Monday's admission that Obamacare premiums are going up by an average of 25% across the country next year. Correspondent Kevin Cork has more from the White House tonight.
Is it a homestretch hiccup or a political pothole? By any definition, massive price spikes in the Affordable Care Act certainly come at an inopportune time for the Obama White House.
To get co-pays and premiums and deductibles down. We're going to tackle prescription drug costs. And we can do that without ripping away the insurance that people now have.
But it's not just Clinton. From New Hampshire to Florida to Arizona, Democrats have been forced to fend off criticism for supporting Obamacare, and Republicans have taken full advantage. Indeed, the issue offers GOP candidates up and down the ticket something to stoke the base in the final 2 weeks of the campaign. Today, White House officials actually blamed Republicans for the pending rate hikes.
Republicans would much rather play politics than solve problems. And that is true with the Republican approach to a wide range of issues, but there's no better example of their approach to play politics and not solve problems than when it comes to the Affordable Care Act.
But some Republicans say, why solve a problem the party didn't create in the first place, when it simply makes more sense to just start fresh?
Obamacare is expensive. It does not work. It's causing bad behavior, and it's causing an impact across all points for people that even aren't on Obamacare.
Brett, you may recall back in 2007, the president said, listen, your premiums will not go up when talking about the Affordable Care Act. Well, Paul Ryan, the House Speaker today, issuing a statement, and he sort of said, well, given the 25% rate hike that we've just heard about, he's calling it now the lie of the decade. Brett?
Kevin Cork live on the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. Stocks were mixed today. The Dow was up 30. The S&P 500 lost 4. The NASDAQ dropped 33. We're inside the 2-week mark until Election Day. We will hear from some of the locals here in New Hampshire and the experts on what's happening here in this state and around the country. That's next. Welcome back to Roby's Country Store in beautiful Hooksett, New Hampshire. The Granite State is known for its First in the Nation primary every 4 years, of course. But that doesn't mean the political season ends here when the snow melts. Correspondent Peter Ducey has been talking with New Hampshire voters about what they're thinking heading into the fall election.
More than 2,000 miles away from the southern border, voters in New Hampshire seem most concerned about immigration.
Illegals, I'd like to see them all go back.
Take care of the American people before the foreigners. That would be the bottom line.
Yeah, I understand, our country's free, let immigrants in, but, you don't want to let everybody in. You need to do, some background searching and stuff like that.
Another major concern in this state of less than 1.5 million people, terrorism and security.
Gun violence and terrorists who can get into America or become radicalized in America. Somebody has to do something about that. It's not right. It makes America unsafe. But I'm not voting for Donald Trump because he makes me feel unsafe.
I'd like the safety of our country. It's getting a little out of control.
I don't want them to go to war because what's going on outside of America is affecting what's happening in America.
But it's not all about the issues for New Hampshireites. It's about personality, and that's turning out to be a problem for both major party candidates.
I don't like any of the candidates right now from a presidential standpoint.
There's no way I would ever vote for Trump, so I'm definitely voting for Hillary Clinton. That's the biggest issue for me right now, is that I think he's ridiculous.
Being a woman, I'd like to see Hillary because she's a woman, but I think we need to have someone strong like Trump.
So New Hampshire voters are living up to their famously independent attitudes, even when it causes problems at home.
He's a Trump, I'm a Clinton, so just kind of funny. We're in the same household. So we're going to cancel each other out.
This is the state where First in the Nation primary voters tend to back candidates that they see around, shake hands with, and grow to respect. And they have that same attitude now that it's the general election. Voters throughout the state kept telling us over and over they just want to back somebody in November they like. Brett.
All right, Peter, thank you. I want to take a look at the races again on the average of polls before we bring in our panel. The presidential race, the Real Clear Politics average, includes the latest polls. It has Hillary Clinton up 7, the Monmouth poll, the NBC poll in here. In the U.S. Senate race, we have the race split, essentially, with Kelly Ayotte, the incumbent, up 1.3. Just take a look at these numbers, though. Clinton and Trump visits to New Hampshire. Clinton 24, Trump 30. And then we have the spending on ads so far. Clinton, $1.33 million, Trump, $604,000. And just to give you a sense here, Senate race expenditures, campaigns, and outside groups, Governor Hassan, $51.9 million. Senator Aide, $51 million. That gives you a sense of how important they think that Senate race is. We want to bring in some local journalists. James Pindell is a political reporter for the Boston Globe, and Paul Steinhauser is political director for NH1. Well, this race is tight, both of them. What's your sense on the ground, how this place is going? First to you.
Well, look, this campaign has been stuck at basically tied for well over a year since Maggie Hassan joined this race. And the number that everyone's watching is really the presidential race. If the spread between, most people believe that Hillary Clinton will win here. If the spread is 6 points, 7 points or under, Kelly Ayotte is very much in the game and has a good shot of winning. If we get above that, if Hillary Clinton wins by 8, 9, 10 points, and for perspective, that happened just in 2008, she may be done.
We have two polls out today, Monmouth and NBC, and they're both different in the presidential race. You have Clinton up 9 and then Clinton up 4. I mean, is it possible that Donald Trump closes the gap here in New Hampshire?
He could. A lot of people are saying that when it comes to the polls, some Trump supporters aren't really expressing their true feelings, and maybe on November 8th here, because we don't have early voting, maybe they'll be voting for Trump. Trump thinks the state is winnable. You talked about those campaign visits. Since the Republican convention, he's coming up on his 8th visit on Friday, tomorrow, or at the end of the week. Clinton's only been here twice.
And the interesting thing is whether Kelly Ayotte, she obviously is not going to be campaigning with him.
That's pretty clear.
On that visit, after what she told me on that writing in Pence. Surprising? How does that go over?
You know what? She's been outperforming Donald Trump in every poll here. Is it hurting her with conservative voters? Not so much, because there's not really a clear alternative. There's no independent candidate the conservatives can go to. It's either Kelly Ayotte or basically nobody.
And the other thing on that, we know the answer to that. In poll after poll after poll, we've shown absolutely no change, even though she officially did divorce Trump.
The issues. Immigration runs high here. If you ask that question, immigration is top, tied, I assume, to the drug issue here.
Well, immigration's been a big topic, particularly among Republicans here, for a very, very long time.
Even though the illegal immigrant situation is very small here.
I know, but Newt Gingrich maybe had this right years ago when he's described this issue up here. He said it's much more of a cultural issue, more than anything else, and it is a fiscal issue. We're not obviously on the border except for Canada, but the opioids is a new way of talking about this as a particular concern.
Yeah. And there's been a big battle in the Senate race over opioids, and it's getting pretty nasty with some of these outside ads that are flooding our airwaves up here. Governor Hassan getting criticized for what she has done or hasn't done over when it comes to the drug crisis here.
This state knows Hillary Clinton very well. This state has a tradition of being independent. Is a splitting ticket kind of vote in a place like New Hampshire something that is very possible?
Oh, I think it's very possible. I think a lot of us are looking at that potential dynamic. Again, if Hillary Clinton only wins by a couple points, 4, 5, 6 points, Kelly Ayotte has a very high favorability rating. She may be able to survive that wave, but if it's bigger than that, I mean, the question people are looking at right now in the presidential race is this a race that John McCain lost in 2008 by 10 points and a lot of Republicans suffered down the ballot, or is it simply that Barack Obama beat Mitt Romney by 7 points? It feels on the ground a lot like 2008 more than it does 2012, but of course Mitt Romney is looking at different poll numbers than a lot of the rest of us.
And I'm struck by Governor Hassan. Every time she talks, she says she's going to stand up to her party, and she even says it right next to Hillary Clinton when she's campaigning with her. The independent streak again.
Very important here. Very important. 4 out of 10 voters here are undeclared voters or independents. That's why you see both Hassan and Ayotte kind of ragging and touting about their independence from their parties. Ayotte is pretty clear now she's not voting for Trump, but Hassan likes to say that she'll disagree with the president or Hillary Clinton if she needs to.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. 4 electoral votes, a very important state. Next up, our national panel looks at the latest Fox News poll on the presidential race and where we are. Back to New Hampshire in just a minute.
There are only 13 days left in this important election, and I have to tell you, it is so clear how high the stakes are.
My theme today is 5 words: under budget, ahead of schedule. That's what we did. This is what I want to do for our country, and this is what we're working so hard to do.
Donald Trump at the International Hotel, Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C., and Hillary Clinton down in Florida. The candidates today, as we mentioned, Trump was in Washington, D.C., also in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Kinston, North Carolina. His vice presidential nominee, Mike Pence, Reno, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Utah, Colorado Springs. Hillary Clinton in Lake Worth, Florida, Tampa, Florida. Tim Kaine, Newtown, Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania. Bill Clinton was in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Chelsea Clinton had 3 stops in Ohio. Now, the latest Fox News poll, as we showed you at the top of the show, has Clinton with a 3-point lead. That has shifted in part because of independents. And you take a look at the 4-way presidential vote preference on independents, and that is a shift from 38% to 41% for Donald Trump, 31 to 28 from our last poll on Hillary Clinton. Let's bring in our national panel. Brunel Donald Shea is the Vice Chair of Diversity Outreach for the National Diversity Coalition for Donald Trump. She joins us from Chicago. In Washington, Mara Liasson, National Political Correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Thank you all for being here. Mara, first to you. Do you see this shifting? Do we see a traditional tightening, or do you think that this is roughly where it has been?
I think it's roughly where it has been. There might be some tightening of the polls, but I do think that this race has been remarkably stable, with Hillary Clinton having a lead, and sometimes it gets bigger, but Donald Trump has yet to kind of reverse the dynamic of the race and start getting ahead in the battleground states and flipping some of those blue states red.
Brunel, I wanted to ask you about another poll question in here, and it deals with minorities, specifically the white and black vote. Hillary Clinton with 82% the black vote in this poll, Donald Trump with only 5%, and you see the breakdown there. From your perspective, what does that tell you, and what does it mean? Do you think it's real?
God bless you, and God bless America first. What I would say is that Donald Trump is the people's candidate. He's the person who's saying jobs, that he's going to give school choice, and those are big issues even in the African American community. So I'm going to tell you, there's backlash when you say, hey, I'm a Trump supporter and I'm black. So what I suspect is going to happen is on November 8th, black people who have been quiet and afraid to speak up are going to speak up louder than ever in that voting booth on November 8th. They're going to vote Trump, and then they may vote for Democrats straight down the ticket. But there are a lot of black people who are contacting me. They're afraid to speak up, but you'll definitely see on November 8th that it is greater than 6%, more like 16% to 25% black vote.
Brunel, on the issues, you think that Donald Trump is well positioned here as the change candidate, and you think, I guess, that these polls, majority of the polls, are not catching that?
What I would say is yes. I mean, the American people, the hurt, the pain, the suffering, the struggling that's going on the ground, it's heartbreaking. And I believe that so many Americans, poor and middle class, our veterans who have felt hopeless in this last 8 years, are going to walk into that voting booth on November 8th, and they're going to express that hurt. They're going to express that pain in a mighty way, in a mighty voice, in favor of Donald Trump, the change agent. We know that he is not part of the corruption that we're seeing in our government. Even with our media, he's not part of the corruption. And so America is going to speak loud and clear. Whites, blacks, Hispanics, Arabs, Chinese, we're going to speak loud and clear that we are tired of the corruption, and we're with Donald Trump. We want to drain the swamp that is that's going on in Washington, D.C.
And that's his tagline there. Charles, you listen to Brunel, you listen to other supporters, and there is this intensity, this enthusiasm. Can you judge how that affects, turnout and the close here over the next, less than 2 weeks?
Well, I think the enthusiasm for Trump surely exceeds that on the part of Democrats for Hillary Clinton. But it's not enough, because the universe of Republicans, at least, it's not enough now. The universe of Trump supporters is simply not large enough to carry a plurality. I do think it's interesting and important that the race has tightened. Mara's right that to some extent we're back where we started the beginning of the year, but if you look at the seminal event of the last month, which was the release of the Hollywood access to tapes, the accusations, when the bottom dropped out for just a few days of the Trump campaign, I think the real story is the narrowing as a result of that. That was an occasion where Trump could have just disappeared. He didn't. He's held his own, and two things have happened. One is that for Hillary, there have been these WikiLeaks releases, which have cumulatively, not individually, but cumulatively, reinforced the impression of a thoroughly corrupt campaign and a cynicism of depths that we haven't seen. And I think that's been important. And you add Obamacare, which is an extremely important issue that swayed two midterm elections and crushed the Democrats. It's now back as a result of those released numbers.
Mara, about that, about Obamacare, about these issues as they're playing out in the final days, and you see $102 million being spent on this Senate race here in New Hampshire. Obviously, the balance of power is a huge story on Election Day.
Yeah, the balance of power is huge. If Hillary Clinton wants to fix Obamacare, which is what she says she wants to do, she's got to have a Democratic Congress, or at least as much of one as she can get to help her do it. Donald Trump says he wants to, repeal and replace it, which is the Republicans' proposal. I think the WikiLeaks thing, today the stories were about the WikiLeaks leaks were about the emails. The emails is kind of a headache for Hillary Clinton that keeps on throbbing. I mean, it just doesn't go away. And you really see a behind-the-scenes look of how her campaign officials understood what kind of problem it was. They were kind of tearing their hair out why she didn't get this out earlier or have a better explanation. And you see the kind of inner circle around her, her personal aides, really being the kind of secretive, not transparent, all the kinds of things that, have helped her get hugely terrible numbers on honesty and trustworthiness.
Yeah. Brunel, what's the most important issue for you, number one? And number two, do you think that Trump supporters care about how the U.S. Senate breaks down, Republican or Democrat, or the House and these House races break down?
The most important issue to me is economics, because the last 8 years, the economy, the poor people of this nation have suffered. The middle class have suffered. And let me tell you something. The American people don't want to be dealing with a presidential person going into office with all the baggage, with all the investigations that are going to be on top of Hillary Clinton. Our nation needs to heal. We want to heal. We want peace between the races. We want to make sure that our youth, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, have jobs. We want to make sure that the Supreme Court, that the Constitution is protected. Those are American issues. That has absolutely nothing to do with your race. That's to protect this nation. And then we want tougher immigration to make sure that our borders are safe, that we are not fighting illegal aliens and refugees for jobs. Americans are tired of fighting other people for jobs. And so that frustration is real. That hurt is real. And for the polls and different people to try to dismiss that, it's not right. It's not right. We're hurting America first.
Brunel, thank you for your time. The panel a little feistier tonight. I appreciate it. Charles and Mara and in the head-to-head, Clinton's 7-point lead has been trimmed to 5 at 49 to 44. In the latest Monmouth survey here in New Hampshire, Clinton has a 46 to 42 edge on Trump, the 4-point cushion less than half the 9-point lead late last month in this state in that poll. The new Monmouth poll has the U.S. Senate race here deadlocked at 46 apiece. Senator Aide was up 2 in this poll last month but has trailed in others. Senator Aide will join us here in a moment. And just a few minutes ago, a new NBC poll here in New Hampshire has Clinton with a 9-point advantage over Trump in that poll. That's up 2 from just 2 last month. In the Senate race, NBC has Senator Aide with a 1-point lead over Governor Hassan. It was 8 points last month. With the major party nominees, Donald Trump began the day not on the campaign payments of enlistment bonuses given to members of the California National Guard who served overseas. Carter has instructed officials to set up a streamlined process by the first of the year to help troops get relief from the overpayment obligation. First First up tonight, something a little different. We begin our election countdown series, Issues That Matter. Here's the full list based on a recent Fox News poll. The #1 issue is, of course, the economy. #2, terrorism. Then it's education, race relations, federal deficit, healthcare is 6th. Then climate change, foreign policy, immigration, and at #10, drug addiction. That is where we begin tonight. This evening, senior correspondent Rick Leventhal here in New Hampshire with concerns about the growing drug epidemic affecting the country, but specifically this region.
Out of the vehicle. Authorities call this Operation Granite Hammer. Agents with the Drug Enforcement Administration join local police busting suspected drug buyers in Manchester, New Hampshire, home to more heroin and opioid addicts per capita than almost anywhere in America.
New Hampshire has suffered so greatly from the heroin crisis and the drugs pouring across the border. The rate of heroin overdose has nearly quadrupled in the state. Once again, our politicians have tragically failed this country.
Both presidential candidates have addressed the issue during this campaign.
When you're ready to get help, there's not enough places to go to get help. And we are losing thousands and thousands of Americans of all age, but particularly young Americans under 40. And we have got to address this.
Hillary Clinton has pledged $10 billion to fight the opioid epidemic, $7.5 billion to support a new federal-state partnership that aims to prevent and treat drug addiction, the rest for existing substance abuse programs, and wants to expand treatment instead of jail for nonviolent offenders. Donald Trump, short on specifics, says he will, quote, stop the flow of illegal drugs into the country, in part by building a wall, and will help all of those people so seriously addicted get the assistance they need. The number of addicts has skyrocketed in the past decade, fueled by the use and abuse of prescription drugs and the rise of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 40 to 50 times stronger than street-level heroin.
Trail, but with another business trip, this time to Washington. He was in D.C. to formally open his new hotel just down the street from the White House. Trump says criticism over the timing of that event is unfair, since Hillary Clinton missed several days of campaigning to study for the debates and took in an Adele concert. In about an hour, Trump will hold a rally in Kinston, North Carolina, and we'll have a live report from there shortly. Hillary Clinton, who's celebrating her 69th birthday today, held a couple of events in Florida, a state Trump must get in order to have a chance of getting to 270 electoral votes. She told a syndicated radio show today she is sick of all the meanness and wants to increase fun and bring people together. Her idea? A big national dance party. In other news, Defense Secretary Ash Carter is ordering the Pentagon to stop seeking